Welcome to Wordpath, the show about the importance of Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are preserving them. My guest tonight is Dr. Carl Downing, who works at the OU Multifunctional Resource Center in bilingual education. Carl is also a retired professor. He retired from as a professor of elementary education at UCO in 1992, and he's on the Committee for Very Special Arts of Oklahoma, an organization that provides programs for handicapped Indian children from Oklahoma and across the nation. Welcome, Carl.
It's very nice to be here. Thank you.
Glad to have you on the program. Can we get a little personal background, first of all? You were born in Oklahoma, correct?
Yes, I was born in Oklahoma, but I grew up in both Oklahoma and California, which gave me a very varied background. The two states where I lived in them was very different.
Now, your heritage is Cherokee, or?
I'm predominantly Cherokee, also in Choctaw and Creek.
Do you speak any of these languages at all?
No. I grew up at that time when Indian parents thought the best thing they could do for their children was to make sure they spoke only English to ensure their success. I did have a Creek grandmother who didn't pay too much attention to my parents, and I learned some Creek when I was young.
Well, that was lucky for you anyway. But of course, I've asked you to be on the program because of your extensive background and experience in education in general, and especially in Indian language programs. I know you've worked with quite a few. When did you first get involved in the language end of education?
Well, I think I have always been, as a college professor, I always worked with Indian people as much as I could. And it was my dream when I retired to work directly with Indian children. Somehow that hasn't materialized, but I had an opportunity to direct a bilingual program for teachers in Indian with Indian students. So I took early retirement and established the Oklahoma Native American Language Development Institute, where we worked training bilingual teachers for Oklahoma for Indian programs. They were Indian specific.
Yeah. Now, I was involved very briefly in that program, as you may recall, as a sort of a linguistic consultant just for 1 week during the first year. But it was actually a 3-year program, right?
Actually, it was a 3-year program. The students who came and stayed all 3 years left the program with a master's degree, well, maybe, with certification in bilingual education or in English as a second language. I think we had 13 who did the whole course. We had another 12 or 13 who lack only 4 or 5 hours having that certification. And this program, although predominantly involved certified teachers, there were those people there who were not teachers, did not have degrees. Some of them didn't have any college work at all. I feel my greatest success was with one of the students who came to me after 3 years and said, if these other people can teach, I can too. I'm going back to college and get a degree.
Very good.
She was an aide at that particular point in time. You mentioned that you were there for a brief time. What we tried to do in that program was we tried to have a native speaker in every language that was represented there. And we tried to back that up with a linguistic specialist who had specialized or had significant knowledge in that language. Worked very well. There are several programs now across Oklahoma that are in existence primarily because of that institute.
That's excellent. Yeah. On our 2 recent programs, we featured Geraldine Greenwood, who is a participant in the institute and is now teaching down at Mill Creek.
Also, the bilingual teacher, Geraldine is the language specialist. The bilingual teacher there was also in the program for 2 years.
So even though the Onaldi program has terminated, its legacy lives on.
Yeah, I think that's true. Onaldi was funded through Title VII, bilingual education, and for whatever reason, bilingual education, the powers that be in Washington decided that short-term teacher training programs were not going to be a part of the program any longer. So those have been phased out.
So even though the Onaldi program itself has terminated after its 3-year life, it seems to have a legacy that lives on.
Yeah, I think that proves the effectiveness of federal programs, that they don't die, although one phase may leave, another phase goes on. There's several very good programs across the state.
So, and of course that there's always that issue of trying to figure out which federal programs are sort of in fashion this year, or what's going to be supported and what's not. But if you have a good solid program, I think it lives on beyond its actual duration, because the people that are trained in it take what they learn.
Yeah, I think a good example of that is the Arizona program that they have at Arizona State or Arizona University. I've forgotten which. But they have a program very similar to the one that we had, and they have now have that where it is funded through private sources and students. The advantage of having a federal grant is that students are able to attend a program without cost to them.
I'm just looking through my papers. I believe I have some information. This is the program you're talking about, right?
Yes.
This is a program called, let's see, let me read a little bit of the announcement here. It says, announcing the 17th Annual American Indian Language Development Institute. It's the University of Arizona, Tucson. This year it will be held June 3rd through 28th. And the topic is the politics of indigenous languages, literatures, and education, national and grassroots strategies for language maintenance. So it's very relevant to what we're talking about. If people want more information about this program, by the way, it's not too late to enroll or to get more information and decide if you would like to enroll. You should address inquiries to the University of Arizona, College of Education, Department of Language, Reading, and Culture, Tucson, Arizona, 85721. And they can send you more information about that.
I think one of the advantages that the Arizona program had is it received federal funding for several years and then was able to go out on its own. And the short-term teacher training program that we had was designed to last 3 years.
I see.
And that was it's very difficult to take that then on and move it into private funding.
I see. So it's sort of set up as a finite thing from the
Right.
start. How about some other things you've been involved in, like NALI, for instance? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Native American
Native
language?
American language development issues is a educational organization whose primary focus is on the development and preservation of native languages. It seems to attract both native speakers and linguists and give them an opportunity to come together at least once a year to discuss issues and to decide, sometimes decide what programs are good, what aren't. It's kind of much of the time, Native people have had a difficult time dealing with the educated world. And this is one of those opportunities where the two get together on equal ground and seems to function very well. Let me see if I can read the announcement here. There is the Native American Language Institute will be held this year out through the University of St. Cloud in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Actually, it's going to be held on one of the reservations where there is a gambling casino. They have received some funding from that organization to help sponsor the program, because it takes quite a bit to put together a program. More information can be found about this by writing to St. Cloud, or not writing, calling, and their area code is 612-654-5449. Or if anyone is really interested, they can call me here at the Bilingual Center, and I'll be glad to answer any questions they have. And I believe that is April the 4th through the 6th.
Very good.
Spring will just be reaching there by that time.
We hope so, even Minnesota.
Yeah, I hope.
Would you like to give your number in case people want to contact you about these?
Yeah, my number is 325-1731.
Okay, and that's your number at the OU Multifunctional Resource Center.
That's right.
Okay, good. What else can we move on to? How
Okay.
about,
One of the other things that is happening here in Oklahoma, this is in June, the Sovereignty
I was
Symposium.
just going to ask you about
Yeah.
that. Good.
The Sovereignty Symposium is sponsored by the Oklahoma Supreme Court and the Oklahoma Indian Affairs Commission. And this is, I guess this is their 9th year, and it's the 4th year that they have had a special program dealing with languages. This year it will be held in Tulsa at the Doubletree at one place. I think there are 2 Doubletrees there, and this was the one place. There will be college credit available through Northeastern at Tahlequah. Carol Young is the person, I believe, who is in charge of that. There are some, they're going to try this year to have the language part demonstrate how you can get from here, college credit, to there, working with kids. And the program isn't completed yet, but they're probably going to have a program from North Rock Creek and one from Little Axe and one from Mill Creek who will be featured in this to help teachers see how to do this. Justice Yvonne Kruger is the person who has been the driving force behind this. She is Osage. And you can reach her office to get information about this at 521-2450. And Julie Rory is the person who's putting this together. Seems to me that this is an excellent opportunity for someone who is wanting to find out more. And this is a set-aside time. It will start on June the 4th and maybe, depending on the program, run into June the 5th. And then the rest of the symposium will run the rest of that week.
And as I understand it, you don't have to enroll for the whole symposium, which is a legal conference and rather expensive to deal with. But you can go just for the language portion separately.
Yes. It's much more expensive than educational conferences. Attorneys seem to have more funds for that sort of thing than we do.
More than linguistics conferences,
right.
too.
But this is a very good opportunity.
Okay, so the best number to call for information on that is the Justice Yvonne Cogger's office.
521
2450. All right, okay, great. They put out some really nice T-shirts at those conferences, too.
Yes.
I have a couple from previous ones.
I do, too.
Beautiful artwork. Really nice and very useful conference, really. It's a good way to network with other people in the state of Oklahoma who are involved in Native American language preservation. It's really an excellent effort, I think. I thought maybe we could talk a little bit, too, about some of the legalities that come in with language preservation in the schools or other language preservation programs. A lot of sort of the granddaddy of a lot of our modern efforts is the Native American Languages Act.
Yes.
And it's to
it's a very recent development. The federal government has had a policy of eliminating native languages up until 1992. Now, in most places that was not pursued vigorously after, probably in the 30s. But that was still the policy.
Right.
In 1990, I guess it was, the Native American Language Act was passed, and it reversed that policy. It was an act that just simply said it will be the policy of the federal government to enhance native languages. And
which was quite an about-face.
Yeah,
it was
a total change
when that statement was made and actually put into law. It was amazing.
And then in 1992, the second Native American Language Act was passed, and this act provided funds to provide for that enhancement through grants to tribes, to universities, to organizations, groups that were trying to enhance Native American languages. It was administrated through the Administration for Native Americans, which is a federal organization. And
that's within Health and Human Services, right?
The first set of grants were done in 1994. Yeah.
I believe so. This would be the third year now, right?
It took 2 years for that to get from the law into actual being. The first set of grants were awarded in 1994, and then there was a second set awarded in 1995. And I assume there will be a third set awarded during this summer. Probably the reading of those grant proposals will be in July, and they'll be awarded for this fall. And those grants go to different, as I indicated before, to different types of groups, primarily to native tribes. But there are some that go to organizations, and universities are eligible to apply for these, providing they work with a specific or named tribes.
I know you've been involved in reviewing proposals for this kind of program. What sort of things do people usually propose? What kind of programs do they have in mind?
Well, a variety of proposals are proposed. I would say that those proposals that come from native tribes are probably given a little advantage over the thing that seems to be the philosophy is they are trying to get away from the slick proposal writers into the type of proposals that will actually do something or allow native tribes to do something. That I have a personal, every review panelist has some personal kinds of feelings about what's going to be successful and what isn't going to be successful. And the thing that always appeals to me is those intergenerational types of proposals, particularly if it's enhanced by the use of some kind of immersion. I personally would be really impressed by a program that took 5 or 6 elders and 5 or 6 or 15 or 20 young children and put them together for a period of time where there could be a total attention given to the development of the language, and incidentally culture would be enhanced by that also.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think that's like the best kind of, or one of my favorite kinds of proposals. Of course, there are other things people need to do, developing materials and dictionaries and archives and many other valuable things. But in terms of just having the greatest impact on the survival of a language, I think that's the very best thing you can do. Get the elders together with the very young, get them talking in that language as much as possible, as frequently as possible. Bring in the cultural things that tie in with the language, and you just can't beat it.
That's certainly the ideal situation.
It's always going to be effective.
Yeah, that has to be the best. Because, if you learn a language and don't use it, it happens just like my Creek. I probably know a half a dozen phrases now. And at one time, I could carry on a conversation.
But you have to get that practice and that exposure.
And it has to be continual.
Participate, in order to really get it. How about this Oklahoma House Bill 1017? There was a lot of commotion about that when that passed a few years ago, and a lot of hope, I know, among the Indian language preservation community that it would provide a chance for more Indian languages to be taught in the school. How has that worked out as far as you've seen?
Well, naturally, it is not going to be as successful as I want it to be. Because I want every Indian kid in the state, and not limited to Indian kids, be able to speak a native language. That's what I want. Well, I realize that's probably not realistic. But
I think it's a beautiful goal, though.
Just as a sidelight here, it is strange to me that in every country, except the United States, it is considered a distinct advantage to be bilingual. In the United States, it's considered to be a disadvantage to be bilingual. At least, in the upper socioeconomic levels, it's considered to be an advantage to be bilingual, and even in the United States. Strange turn of events. However, the House Bill 1017 provided that every child in Oklahoma, starting at kindergarten, would be provided some type of, and they call the term is foreign language instruction. And very clearly in the law it says that native languages qualify, which means that every school could have been teaching native languages. Many of the schools chose to use something other than a native language. As a matter of fact, only a few schools use native language to fulfill this requirement, and I'm disappointed in that.
So a lot of schools with a lot of Indian children are nevertheless teaching Spanish.
Spanish or Japanese.
Really?
Well, Shawnee teaches Japanese. They teach other languages too, but they teach Japanese. But they have a plant there where there's many Japanese families. And they have...
Well, that's a sort of cultural resource,
Yeah,
too. I can't argue with that, but is there anything in
yeah.
the law that says it can only be one language? Or
No.
is it a matter of,
No.
is there a lack of funding
No,
to do more than one?
it would be the limited resources that would
Yeah.
cause you to only use one language. But Shawnee does other language other than Japanese. I'm aware of that because the person who does the instructing in Japanese comes into my wife's classroom. And the kids just love, because he is a superb teacher. Although he's not a trained educator, he is a superb teacher, and they just have a great time with it.
Well,
so
that's good.
you know, and
Love to
you
see
know,
him teaching a lot of Indian languages too, though. My gosh,
Yeah.
Shawnee is one of the places where it would be
and
quite a receptive
they do
audience.
have some native language instruction.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, I know another situation that's come up is in some schools like Anadarko High School. We had Ronald Red Elk on the show once, and he's the assistant principal there. He pointed out that there are 3 or 4 different tribes there with sizable populations among their student population, and the problem there, again, because of limited resources, is that they had to kind of pick one Indian language to teach. And they do have classes in Kiowa language now.
Yeah,
But,
I think that resources become a very definite part of what you can do, and this is again it is also political involvement from 2 levels. If you are teaching in a school where there's a predominant number of the parents are of one tribe, and you do a different tribe, it might not be politically sound.
Might give offense or make people feel left out or put down, which you don't want to do, but it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? You can't do it all.
And then also the other aspect of politics of this is most of the funding that comes to public education comes through political sources. If you have, well, just as an idea, let's drop back to this House Bill 1017. There were Kelly Haney, who is a Seminole senator, is probably, if not exclusively, primarily responsible for native languages being considered as foreign languages in that bill. So that part being in.
Well,
very much a political
be very
decision.
grateful to him then.
Yeah, right.
Yes. I know he played an important role in speaking on behalf of Indian languages when there was an English-only proposal on the floor of the state legislature, and was very influential in I think, protecting the interests of Indian language by opposing that particular law.
There are several Indian legislators. Kelly probably is the most outspoken.
Right.
But we continually run up against this idea that somehow, if you do anything other than English, that it's un-American.
Right. It's a very unfortunate attitude.
It's a strange attitude to have.
And then there's the other thing that sort of can tie in with that you mentioned before, that a lot of people they think in terms of their own common sense, and they think, well, why would I want my child to learn 2 languages when they could learn just one and get really good at just the one? Won't they be better at English if they don't try to also learn Choctaw or Comanche or something? And it's just not true. Linguistically and pedagogically speaking,
it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't work that way. In fact, it stimulates them, and they do better if they're
They do better in the...
It's so hard to convince people of that.
One of the things that has always struck me as strange in bilingual education, if you take a child who comes to school and let's say, I'm familiar with what's happened in Cherokee. Let's say he comes to school and there's a little bit of English in the home, but there's more Cherokee. That child, when he reaches the 8th grade, will be much better in English, reading in English, if he's taught to read in Cherokee and then learns to read in English as a transfer. Now, logically, that just doesn't fit. But
it's true.
over and over again, every time that you set up research project to deal with this, it comes out exactly the same way.
It's so hard to convince people
Yeah.
of the results of very good professional research, though.
Well, in terms of if
People have a hard time trusting.
Yeah,
that it really will
I
work.
trust all the research that agrees with what I think.
Well, don't we all? Right. Well, tell me, Carl, you've had this vast experience looking at proposals and programs from around the country, and especially from around Oklahoma, too, and you're a professional educator of long standing and a long interest in Indian languages. Can you kind of sum up for us where we stand today with what is the future of Oklahoma Indian languages? What's your honest assessment as to will these languages survive, or a certain number of them?
Well, across the country we have roughly 200 native languages, and we have 50 of them that what we call are just about ready to die. That means only a few speakers. We have another 100 that are falling in the middle, and then we have about 50 across the country who young children are learning the language, and they look pretty good. In Oklahoma, we have, depending on what criteria you use, 37, 38, 39 tribes. Of that group, about probably 5 to 7 are in good shape. That is, by that I mean that young children are learning the language, and there's an organized program to keep the language going, and then the others run all the way to some. What was it? 2 years ago, the last native speakers of 3 languages died. Okay, that's kind of where we look like we are now. How do I think that's going to play out? Let's move to, let's say, a generation away. We're at 1995, let's move to 2030. My guess is that by 2030 that the number of languages that are in the safe category will have decreased. The number of languages that where there are no speakers left will have increased. I see a shifting. If I had to, if we put it on a, let's say that today that we are looking at native languages in Oklahoma being at a 5. Then I would say that by 1935, native languages are going to be at about a 2.
At a 2?
At a 2, decreasing.
Within about 40 years.
And within 40
It's
years.
like on a scale of 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I think that the native languages will decrease. That's not what I want, and I'll do everything I can to keep that from happening.
I think we all will.
But we have the I think the greatest thing we have working against native languages is television.
Well,
That's
I agree. I'm afraid we're about out of time. We're not going to get into that very much, but I'm sure a lot of people around the state agree with you on that. And all we can do is just keep on doing the best we can.
You have to keep working at it.
Try our best. I want to thank you very much for being on the program, Carl. I'm sorry we're running out of time. But it's been a pleasure talking to you. Very informative. Thank you very much. And we'll see you all next time on Wordpath.
Ana magwana kita wa pene manaone kita na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene manaone kita na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene manaone kita na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene manaone kita